Welcome back, folks. Earlier in the week, I sat down here in my office for 6 hours straight with around 1,500 plus of you, and I watched the Canadian election. Now, I thought it was rather eye-opening because there were quite a few parallels to New Zealand, you might say, but I found it eye-opening primarily because of how desperate the left were to keep the Conservative Party out of power. Now, I look at the Conservative Party and I don't see all that much difference with, let's say, New Zealand's National Party. Nonetheless, the left were desperate to keep them out. Now, a lot of people say this is because of the whole Trump issue, the Trump's tariffs and threats to their sovereignty and all this sort of stuff, and that's somehow Pierre Poilievre, who was the leader of the Conservative Party, found a way to take a 25-point lead in the polls and just collapse. Now, one might say that, yeah, he did indeed have that party go from a position where they were undoubtedly going to win a majority to suddenly not being in government at all. However, the Liberals were the incumbents. The Liberals did have a reasonably strong showing, but it was only because the left rallied behind them. You look at the likes of the New Democrats. They were up at 18% of the vote last time around, and now they're dwindling at 6%. The same with the Bloc. They lost several seats themselves. The Liberals gained a few, but so did the Conservatives. The Conservatives gained so many more seats than every other party. This was a two-horse race. But there was one particular seat which didn't quite go the Conservatives' way, and that was the seat of their leader, Pierre Poilievre, who, despite holding the seat for the last 21 years, lost to his Liberal rival. What does that say about him as a leader? I don't know. I think a lot of people are annoyed with him. They're annoyed that they didn't get the victory that they desired, that they didn't capitalize on their 25-point advantage in the polls earlier in the year, that he took a particular stance during the campaign which ultimately impacted their ability to be elected. I don't know. It's very, very bizarre. But it illustrates to me that people aren't necessarily content with the status quo, with softball election campaigns. Election campaigns that aren't filled with all that much inspiration, but are really safe. This is something that Christopher Luxon in New Zealand did rather well. He played a very safe election and somehow managed to get over the line. But what Christopher Luxon did do was throw away the opportunity for a two-party coalition, and instead he got forced upon him a three-party coalition because of how many Conservative voters he pushed away. How many voters who really wanted to see a change from the status quo that he pushed away. This appears to be what Pierre Poilievre has done, and in Pierre's case, he's lost his seat entirely, and being in Canada, being the leader of the party, that means he's probably going to be stepping down. Now, Canada seems to be a very liberal country, just generally, even more so than New Zealand, and I don't see much hope for them going into the future. I had someone come into the chat during the live stream and say, I'm an Albertan, I'm from Alberta, and he wants out. People in Alberta, they voted, I think, around 66% in favour of the Conservative Party, and when you compare that to the actual numbers across the nation, it was 41% in favour of the Conservatives, 43.7% in favour of the Liberals. As I said, it's a two-party race. However, some regions are far more in favour of the Conservative Party than others, and I think those more conservative regions are just fed up. Clearly 9 years under Trudeau wasn't enough for them. Trudeau's replacement, Mark Carney, is just a globalist banker who is now in the Canadian Parliament and is going to be their Prime Minister, or stay on as their Prime Minister after he replaced Trudeau. Good for him. Wish him luck. It's not my election, it's not my country, but I think it highlights just how, one, fickle voters are, and two, just how important it is to put together a coherent and inspiring election campaign.